You have heard that sound your entire life. In war footage, in documentaries, in every film set on a World War II battlefield, a Pacific island, a Korean ridgeline, a Vietnamese jungle, an Iraqi desert, that slow, deliberate, mechanical thumping. Deeper than a rifle. More authoritative than a machine gun. The sound of something that means business in a way that nothing else quite replicates. The M2 Browning, Ma Deuce, 50 caliber heavy machine gun that has been the standard heavy machine gun of the United States military since 1933. And somewhere in the back of your mind, if you know your World War II history, you know that weapon was everywhere. On tanks, on aircraft, on ships, on vehicles, on fixed emplacements. And the 50 caliber was the universal heavy weapon of the American military in World War II, the weapon that appeared on every platform that could carry it. But here's what most accounts of the 50 caliber's history never fully explain. The weapon you associate with tanks, aircraft, and ground vehicles was also the primary defensive armament of the most important ships of World War II. Not the battleships, not the carriers, not the destroyers, the Liberty ships, the cargo ships that carried the food, the fuel, the ammunition, the tanks, the aircraft, and the men that kept the Allied war effort alive across the most dangerous ocean in the history of naval warfare. According to Liberty ship reports, 2,710 Liberty ships were built between 1941 and 1945. Each one carried a defensive armament that included 50 caliber machine guns, the same weapon that was defending American tanks in North Africa, American aircraft over Germany, and American ground forces in the Pacific. The weapon that defended the supply line that won World War II is the same weapon that is defending American forces today. And the story of why that weapon was on those ships, what it did there, and why 80 years of subsequent development has not produced a replacement is one of the most extraordinary stories in the history of American military hardware. So why was the 50 caliber machine gun the primary defensive weapon on a cargo ship? What specific threats was it designed to counter, and what threats was it completely inadequate against? Why did the United States Navy put 20 to 40 sailors on every Liberty ship specifically to operate defensive weapons? And what happened to those sailors when the ship was sunk? What is the Navy armed guard? And why has history largely forgotten the men who served in it, despite casualty rates that rivaled combat infantry? Why does the M2 Browning, a weapon designed in 1918 and standardized in 1933, remain the standard heavy machine gun of the United States military in 2024? And why, after 80 years of development and billions of dollars in research, has no replacement been found that meaningfully surpasses it for the combination of range, energy, versatility, and reliability that the heavy machine gun mission requires? Here's the one fact that should stop you completely. The M2 Browning has been in continuous service with the United States military since 1933, making it the longest-serving weapon in the United States military. The weapon that defended Liberty ships in the North Atlantic in 1942 is still mounted on American armored vehicles, helicopters, and naval vessels today. The sailors who operated it on Liberty ships in World War II and the soldiers who operate it in the 21st century are using the same fundamental weapon, the same operating system, the same cartridge, the same basic mechanical architecture, separated by 80 years of history and connected by a design that nobody has been able to improve upon in any way that matters on the battlefield. Now, most people who know the Liberty ship story assume the ship's defensive armament was primarily about the deck gun. The deck gun was the primary weapon. The 50 caliber machine guns were secondary, useful against aircraft and small boats, but not the main defensive capability. That assumption misses the operational reality of what Liberty ships actually faced in the North Atlantic. The deck gun was real, and it was significant. Liberty ships were typically armed with a 3-inch 50 caliber gun on the bow and a 5-inch 38 caliber gun aft for defense, often supplemented by 20mm and 40mm anti-aircraft guns. The stern gun could engage a surfaced submarine at ranges of several miles. In the right circumstances, when a submarine surfaced to attack with its deck gun rather than torpedoes, the Liberty ship's stern gun was a genuine defensive capability, but the primary threat to Liberty ships was not a surfaced submarine engaging with its deck gun. It was a submerged submarine firing torpedoes. Against a torpedo fired from a submerged submarine, the deck gun was useless. The 50 caliber machine guns were useless. Every weapon on the ship was useless. The torpedo was already in the water before anyone on the ship knew the submarine was there. The 50 caliber machine guns on Liberty ships were not primarily anti-submarine weapons. They were anti-aircraft weapons, designed to defend against the German Focke-Wulf FW-200 Condor long-range maritime patrol aircraft that located convoys and called in submarine wolf packs, and against the Heinkel He-111 and Junkers Ju-88 aircraft that attacked convoys directly with bombs and torpedoes. They were also anti-surface weapons, designed to defend against the E-boats, the fast German torpedo boats that attacked convoys in coastal waters. Understanding what the 50 caliber actually did on Liberty ships, and why the weapon that was designed for that role in 1918 is still performing that role today, requires understanding both the specific threats that Liberty ships faced and the specific physics that make the 50 caliber cartridge so difficult to replace. Do you enjoy watching our videos? We'd love to know in the comments. We put a lot of effort into our videos and make them absolutely free, but producing them is not free. If you have gotten any value from this channel and want to help keep daily uploads going, buying us a coffee through the link below makes a real difference. Every generous contribution helps improve our videos and keep daily uploads possible. Thank you for the support. Now, back to the video. Now, here is what the Liberty ship's defensive armament actually consisted of, what it did, and why the 50 caliber machine gun at the center of that armament has remained the standard heavy machine gun for 80 years. The Liberty ship's defensive armament. Liberty ships were typically armed with a 3-inch 50 caliber gun on the bow and a 5-inch 38 caliber gun aft for defense, often supplemented by 20mm and 40mm anti-aircraft guns. While not the primary heavy armament, 50 caliber machine guns were used for anti-aircraft defense and general fire support, sometimes mounted in open ring rotating mounts. Crew sizes ranged from 50 to 100 people. Most were civilians from the United States Merchant Marine, usually between 30 and 60 crew members. The rest were part of the United States Navy Armed Guard, typically 20 to 40 sailors, tasked with defending the ship from enemy attacks during the voyage. The Navy Armed Guard is one of the most underappreciated units of World War II. These were not merchant sailors. They were United States Navy personnel, trained gunners assigned to merchant vessels to operate the defensive armament. They lived on the ship, ate with the merchant crew, and when the ship was attacked, they manned the guns. When the ship was sunk, they went into the water with everyone else. 50 caliber machine guns were used for anti-aircraft defense and general fire support, sometimes mounted in open ring rotating mounts. The open ring mount, a circular track on which the gun could be rotated to engage targets in any direction, was the standard mounting for 50 caliber guns on Liberty ships. The gunner stood inside the ring, traversed the gun to track the target, and fired. There was no armor protection and no enclosed turret. The gunner was exposed to the elements, to enemy fire, and to the blast of his own weapon. Now here's the physics of why the 50 caliber was the right weapon for this role, and why it remains the right weapon for the heavy machine gun role 80 years later. The 50 caliber Browning machine gun round carries approximately 13,000 foot-pounds of kinetic energy at the muzzle. A standard 9mm pistol round carries approximately 400 foot-pounds. The 50 caliber round carries roughly 32 times the energy of a 9mm round. Against an aircraft, a target that is fast, maneuvering, and approaching at high speed, that energy is what matters. A round that carries 13,000 foot-pounds of energy can destroy an aircraft engine, sever a control surface, or detonate a fuel tank. A round that carries 400 foot-pounds cannot. The M2 Browning fires at a cyclic rate of approximately 450 to 600 rounds per minute. The effective range against aircraft is approximately 1,800 meters. Against a Focke-Wulf FW-200 Condor approaching at 200 miles per hour, that range gives the gunner approximately 18 seconds of engagement time before the aircraft is overhead. 18 seconds at 600 rounds per minute is 180 rounds, enough to put a significant number of rounds in the aircraft's path if the gunner is tracking correctly. The versatility of the 50 caliber cartridge, unlike smaller calibers like 30-06, is that it has a large enough projectile to carry a wide variety of ordnance and material like high explosive, incendiary, or large hardened penetrators. On a Liberty ship, this versatility meant the same weapon could engage aircraft with incendiary rounds, engage surface submarines with armor-piercing rounds, and engage E-boats with ball ammunition. One weapon, one mounting, multiple threat categories. The M2 Browning's operating system is short recoil operated and belt-fed. It fires from a closed bolt. Upon firing, the barrel itself reciprocates a short distance, imparting momentum to the bolt and bolt carrier. The bolt unlocks and continues to the rear, ejects the case downward, and pulls a new cartridge with it from the belt. As the bolt attains its full rearward travel, the driving spring and compressed buffer discs push it forward as it chambers the new cartridge and advances the belt. This operating system, designed by John Moses Browning in 1918, has proven so reliable and so effective that it has never been fundamentally changed. The M2A1, the current production variant, differs from the original M2, primarily in the addition of a quick change barrel that eliminates the need to manually adjust headspace and timing after each barrel change. The fundamental operating system is unchanged. The M2 also provides a semi-automatic setting, which, coupled with its closed bolt operation, allows for astounding accuracy. Gunnery Sergeant Carlos Hathcock used a customized M2HB to make the longest confirmed kill in history while deployed to Vietnam in 1967. That shot was 2,500 yards, and the record stood for 35 years. The weapon that defended Liberty ships in the North Atlantic was accurate enough, in the hands of a skilled operator, to make the longest confirmed sniper kill in history. The Liberty ship's defensive armament was not just the 50 caliber. The primary anti-aircraft weapon on Liberty ships was the 20mm Oerlikon cannon, which provided a higher rate of fire and a larger explosive projectile than the 50 caliber. Standard 50 caliber usage often included machine guns and open ring mounts for closer range defense. The 20mm Oerlikon was the primary anti-aircraft weapon at medium range. The 50 caliber was the close range defense, the last line of protection against an aircraft that had survived the 20mm fire and was making its final attack run. The Navy Armed Guard sailors who operated these weapons were not trained naval gunners in the traditional sense. They were young men, many of them teenagers, who had received basic gunnery training and been assigned to merchant vessels. They operated their weapons in conditions that no training program could fully prepare them for: North Atlantic winter storms, convoy attacks at night, aircraft approaching from multiple directions simultaneously, and torpedo explosions that could sink the ship in minutes. The Navy Armed Guard suffered significant casualties throughout the war. The Merchant Marine as a whole, including both civilian crew and Navy Armed Guard, suffered casualty rates that were among the highest of any service in World War II. Ships were sunk without warning. Survivors spent hours or days in the North Atlantic before rescue. Many did not survive long enough to be rescued. The Liberty ship program that these men defended, with an average of 3 ships completed every 2 days from 1941 to 1945, became the most mass-produced ship in history, helping to turn the tide of the war. Each Liberty ship carried around 9,000 metric tons of cargo, the equivalent of more than 250 fully loaded semi-trailer trucks. The 50 caliber machine guns and the other defensive weapons on those ships were defending not just the ship and its crew, but that cargo, which the Allied war effort could not afford to lose. Defense. By September of 1945, 2,710 Liberty ships had been built. Each one carried a defensive armament that included 50 caliber machine guns, operated by Navy Armed Guard crews of 20 to 40 sailors. The total number of Navy Armed Guard sailors who served on Liberty ships and other merchant vessels during World War II exceeded 144,000. Service. The M2 Browning has been in continuous service with the United States military since 1933, making it the longest-serving weapon in the United States military. Roughly 50,000 M2 Browning machine guns remain in use by the American military today. The weapon is in service with nearly 100 nations worldwide. The 50 caliber BMG cartridge generates approximately 13,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Its effective range against area targets is approximately 1,800 meters. The cyclic rate is 450 to 600 rounds per minute. The weapon weighs approximately 84 pounds without its mount. Power. The 2,710 Liberty ships built during the war carried a combined cargo capacity of approximately 24.4 million metric tons. The food, fuel, ammunition, vehicles, and equipment that kept the Allied war effort alive. Capacity. The M2 Browning's presence on Liberty ships was not accidental. It was the result of a specific sequence of decisions about how to arm merchant vessels that traced directly back to the lessons of World War I. Lessons. The M2 was developed by John Moses Browning in Winchester in 1918 at the request of General John Pershing, who wanted an anti-aircraft and anti-vehicle cartridge more powerful than existing rifle calibers. The cartridge was designed around the same time as the M2 machine gun that would become its primary platform, a weapon that has been in continuous service since 1933. Development. The decision to arm Liberty ships with 50 caliber machine guns reflected the lessons of the Battle of the Atlantic. German U-boats were sinking Allied merchant ships at a rate that threatened to strangle the Allied war effort. But the U-boats were not the only threat. German long-range maritime patrol aircraft, particularly the Focke-Wulf FW-200 Condor, were locating convoys and directing submarine wolf packs to them. The Condor could also attack directly with bombs and torpedoes. A merchant ship with no anti-aircraft capability was defenseless against the Condor. Convoys' crew sizes on Liberty ships ranged from 50 to 100 people. Most were civilians from the U.S. Merchant Marine, usually between 30 and 60 crew members. The rest were part of the U.S. Navy Armed Guard, typically 20 to 40 sailors, tasked with defending the ship from enemy attacks during the voyage. Crew. The Navy Armed Guard program was established specifically to provide trained gunners for merchant vessels. Before the program, merchant ships were either unarmed or armed with weapons operated by civilian crew members who had no gunnery training. The Navy Armed Guard brought military discipline, military training, and military weapons to the merchant fleet, and the 50 caliber machine gun was the primary weapon they operated. Training. The M2 Browning's combat record in World War II established its reputation as the most effective heavy machine gun in the American arsenal. It was used on ships, aircraft, tanks, and in infantry roles, creating a standardized logistical chain. The same cartridge, the same weapon, the same spare parts, across every platform that carried it. The logistical simplicity of a single heavy machine gun that worked on every platform was as important as the weapon's technical performance. The M2A1, the current production variant, introduced the quick change barrel that eliminated the headspace and timing adjustment requirement. The M2A1 removed the need to manually adjust headspace and timing, which had been a major maintenance issue. This improvement, the most significant change to the M2 in 80 years of service, addressed the primary operational limitation of the original design without changing the fundamental operating system. The single major change to the M2 Browning in 80 years of continuous service was a barrel that could be swapped faster. Not a new operating system, not a new caliber, not a successor weapon. A faster barrel change. That fact alone tells you everything about what John Browning designed in 1918, a weapon so fundamentally correct that 8 decades of military engineering could not improve on its core. But the engineering principles built into how that weapon was mounted and aimed, specifically the solution to the problem of how you engage a target moving in any direction without repositioning the platform carrying the gun, did not stop at the machine gun. That principle scaled from the open ring mount on a Liberty ship deck to the fully stabilized turret of an M1A2 Abrams. The physics are identical, the geometry is identical, only the scale changed. You have been surrounded by the engineering principles of the M2 Browning and the Liberty ship's defensive armament your entire life without recognizing it. The open ring mount that the Navy Armed Guard used to operate 50 caliber machine guns on Liberty ships, a circular track on which the gun could be rotated to engage targets in any direction, is the same mounting principle as the rotating turret on a modern armored vehicle. Both allow the weapon to be traversed through 360 degrees to engage targets in any direction without repositioning the vehicle or the ship. The Liberty ship's ring mount and the M1A2 Abrams turret are both applications of the same rotational mounting principle at different scales. The 50 caliber cartridge's versatility, its ability to accept ball, armor-piercing, incendiary tracer and armor-piercing incendiary projectiles in the same cartridge case, mirrors the platform versatility of a modular smartphone. The smartphone's hardware platform accepts a wide range of software applications that extend its functionality beyond its basic design. The 50 caliber cartridge case accepts a wide range of projectile types that extend the weapon's effectiveness beyond its basic design. Both are platforms optimized for versatility rather than single-purpose performance. M2 Browning's short recoil operating system, where the barrel and bolt recoil together before separating, follows the same energy recovery principle as the regenerative braking system in a hybrid automobile. In regenerative braking, the kinetic energy of the moving vehicle is captured and converted to electrical energy rather than being wasted as heat. In the M2's short recoil system, the kinetic energy of the fired cartridge is captured and used to cycle the action rather than being wasted as recoil. Both systems use the same energy. They use the energy of the primary event to power the reset for the next event. The Navy Armed Guard sailors who operated 50 caliber machine guns on Liberty ships, young men with basic gunnery training assigned to defend ships they had never sailed on before, reflect the same principle as the cross-trained workforce Ford used at Willow Run to build B-24 bombers. Both programs took workers with no prior experience in their assigned role, gave them specific training for specific tasks, and deployed them in conditions no training program could fully replicate. The Navy Armed Guard gunner and the Willow Run assembly worker were both products of the same American industrial and military mobilization philosophy, which was to train people for specific tasks and to trust the system to produce results. The Liberty ship's combination of defensive weapons, the 5-inch stern gun for long-range surface engagement, the 20mm Oerlikon for medium-range anti-aircraft defense, and the 50 caliber for close-range defense, follows the same layered defense principle as the modern carrier battle group's layered air defense system. The carrier battle group uses long-range missiles for distant threats, medium-range missiles for intermediate threats, and close-in weapon systems for final defense. The Liberty ship used its stern gun for distant threats, its 20mm guns for intermediate threats, and its 50 caliber guns for final defense. The layered defense principle is identical whether the platform is a 1942 cargo ship or a 2024 carrier battle group. The M2 Browning's 80-year service life, the longest of any weapon in the US military, reflects the same longevity principle as the B-52 bomber, which has been flying since 1952, and which the Air Force says will still be flying in 2050. Both the M2 and the B-52 have survived repeated replacement attempts because no successor has been able to match their combination of capability, versatility, and reliability for the specific missions they perform. The weapon that defended Liberty ships in 1942 and the bomber that flew nuclear alert missions in 1962 are both still in service today for the same reason: the design was right. And right designs are very hard to improve upon. Now for the honest part, because the historical record requires it, the 50 caliber machine guns on Liberty ships were not an adequate defense against the primary threat those ships faced. The primary threat was the torpedo fired from a submerged submarine. Against that threat, the 50 caliber was useless. The 20mm Oerlikon was useless. The 5-inch stern gun was useless. Every weapon on the ship was useless against a torpedo already in the water. There is some historical debate about early bow setups, with some Liberty ships appearing to have had 37mm guns instead of the 3-inch guns initially. The defensive armament evolved throughout the war as the threat environment changed and as more capable weapons became available, but no defensive armament could fully address the submarine torpedo threat. The real defense against submarines was the convoy system, the escort vessels, and the development of anti-submarine warfare capabilities, not the weapons on the merchant ships themselves. The Navy Armed Guard sailors who operated the defensive weapons on Liberty ships faced a fundamental asymmetry. They could defend against aircraft. They could defend against surfaced submarines. They could defend against E-boats, but they could not defend against the weapon most likely to kill them: the torpedo from a submerged submarine that arrived without warning and sank the ship in minutes. The M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun weighs approximately 84 pounds without its mount. That weight is a genuine operational limitation. The weapon requires a vehicle, a helicopter, a ship, or a fixed mount, which limits its utility in environments where dismounted infantry operations are the primary mode of combat. The weapon that defended Liberty ships in the North Atlantic is not a weapon that a single soldier can carry and employ effectively on foot. The M2 Browning has survived 80 years of replacement attempts, not because it is perfect, but because it is the best solution to the specific combination of requirements that the heavy machine gun mission demands. Attempts to replace it have consistently failed to produce a weapon that matches its terminal effectiveness at range, while achieving a meaningful weight reduction. The physics of the 50 caliber cartridge, the mass and velocity required to achieve terminal effectiveness, impose a minimum weapon weight that lighter materials and designs have not been able to significantly reduce. That is where you actually land. You came in knowing the M2 Browning was a long-serving weapon. What you now understand is the specific connection between that weapon and the most important ships of World War II, and why the same physics that made it the right weapon for defending Liberty ships in 1942 makes it the right weapon for defending American forces today. The 2,710 Liberty ships that carried the food, fuel, ammunition, and equipment that kept the Allied war effort alive were defended by Navy Armed Guard sailors operating 50 caliber machine guns in open ring mounts on the deck. Those sailors, 20 to 40 of them on every ship, were the last line of defense against the aircraft and surface vessels that threatened the supply line that won the war. They operated a weapon designed in 1918, standardized in 1933, and still in production today. Roughly 50,000 M2 Browning machine guns remain in use by the American military today. The weapon is in service with nearly 100 nations worldwide. The 50 caliber cartridge that John Moses Browning and Winchester designed in 1918 is still the standard heavy machine gun cartridge of the United States military and most of its allies. The Navy Armed Guard sailors who operated that weapon on Liberty ships in the North Atlantic are largely forgotten by history. They were not soldiers. They were not Marines. They were Navy sailors assigned to civilian ships, operating weapons in conditions that no training program could fully prepare them for, defending cargo that the Allied war effort could not afford to lose. They deserve to be remembered. And the weapon they operated, the weapon that is still defending American forces 80 years later, stands as a fitting memorial to what they did. If you think the M2 Browning's 80-year service life is the most remarkable longevity story in American military hardware, wait until you find out about the aircraft that has been flying since 1952 and that the Air Force says will still be flying in 2050. The B-52 Stratofortress, the bomber that flew nuclear alert missions during the Cuban Missile Crisis, that dropped bombs on Vietnam, that launched cruise missiles in Desert Storm, and that is flying combat missions today, is on track to serve for 95 years. The engineering reason why a bomber designed when Dwight D. Eisenhower was president remains irreplaceable in the 21st century is one of the most counterintuitive stories in the history of American military aviation. If you stayed with this story to the end, you now understand something that most histories of World War II never fully explain. The weapon that is defending American forces today, mounted on armored vehicles in the Middle East, on helicopters in Afghanistan, on naval vessels in the Pacific, is the same weapon that defended the Liberty ships that carried the cargo that won World War II. The Navy Armed Guard sailors who operated it in the North Atlantic in 1942 and the soldiers and sailors who operate it today are separated by 80 years of history and connected by a design that nobody has been able to improve upon in any way that matters on the battlefield. The 2,710 Liberty ships, the 144,000 Navy Armed Guard sailors, the 9,000 metric tons of cargo on every ship, the 50 caliber machine guns and the open ring mounts on the deck, these are the numbers behind the supply line that won the war. And the weapon at the center of that defense is still firing today. Drop a comment below. Tell us if you had a family member who served in the Navy Armed Guard or sailed on a Liberty ship. Tell us what you knew about the Liberty ship's defensive armament before this video, and what surprised you. Tell us what you want us to cover next. Every comment helps this channel reach more people who care about this history. And this history, the ships, the sailors, the weapon that defended them, and the 80 years of service that followed, deserves to be heard by as many people as possible. If you want to support the channel, there is a link below. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.